Welcome back to Green Disruptors, the podcast spotlighting innovators reshaping our planet's future through sustainable solutions. Today, I'm joined by Henk Mooiweer, co-founder of Grassroots Carbon, a company helping corporations reduce their carbon footprint through regenerative ranching practices that restore grasslands and store carbon directly in the soil. In this conversation, Henk shares how managing cattle differently by mimicking nature's own grazing cycles can revitalize ecosystems, support ranchers, and offer companies like Microsoft and Nestlé a more reliable path to carbon removal. Let's dive into how carbon credits, healthy soil, and regenerative land management all come together to tackle climate change from the ground up. Welcome to Green Disruptors, Henk.
Yes, thank you, Megan. It's a pleasure to be here, of course.
Yeah, excited to have you. Tell us where you are, first of all.
I'm in Houston. I live in Houston for about 20 years. So maybe a little bit about myself. You can hear from my accent that I'm originally from West Texas. Kidding, that's not true, of course. My accent is Dutch. I used to work for a very large energy company. That's how I ended up in Houston. But I live here for about 20 years. I left that large company about 10 years ago because I got very intrigued by my large job in that company, what you can do with regenerative grazing and how you can store tremendous amounts of carbon in soil. And not only that, you improve grassland ecology with a lot of other super beneficial things, but I'm sure we're going to talk about it.
I'm going to say, you're 3 steps ahead of me there. I was going to ask if Houston and Texas was a culture shock for you.
I like to discover new things, so I really enjoy new cultures. Of course, there's a very different culture, but it's great to learn, and you look at differences, and from the difference you can learn. So that's good.
And you can grow and
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I view it the same way, so that's great. Okay, so tell us about your background and how that led to what you're doing at the current moment.
Yeah, so I'm an organic chemist from training. I have a PhD in organic chemistry, and then I had a very diverse career. And the last job I had with this large energy company was basically corporate angel investment, where we invested in people with crazy ideas.
Yeah.
Peter Big, a movie maker from Arizona State University, he came to that company and said, "We can store all your carbon in soil by just managing grassland in a different way." I said, "Yeah, sure." I became the project manager there, and we were very skeptical, of course. So what is wrong with this idea? Why is it not scalable? Where is the flaw? How can you not measure it? And we started to invest quite some money in there. And you come to the realization of, this is probably the largest opportunity we have overlooked. People forgot about how much carbon there is in soil. That was 10 years ago. So fast forward, it led me to starting a company basically to store carbon in soil. And create very high quality carbon removal credits. So what we basically try to do is to make it easier for companies to reduce their carbon impact, and do that in a way by delivering very high quality nature-based carbon removal credits. High quality because these things are measured, they're very reliable, third-party verified, etc., etc. All the quality requirements you should expect as a buyer. But that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is probably way more exciting. That is how we support in this way landowners to really implement different ways of land management. It's sometimes called regenerative land management, sometimes called adaptive multi-paddock grazing. But basically what you try to do there is to work with nature and less against nature. And if you start doing that, you get incredible changes on that land. So that's the cool news. So while you can help companies reduce their carbon impact, you basically restore grassland ecology, and I can talk about what it actually does for grasslands.
Yeah, so, tell us the name of the company.
Yeah, of course, Grassroots Carbon, yeah. We're based in San Antonio, we're a fast-growing company, and we deliver these carbon credits to well-known companies like Microsoft and Nestlé and a whole bunch of others, yeah.
So when you're delivering the carbon credits, it's like, are you implementing the solutions, or are you like finding people who are already doing it and validating?
Yeah, so we're implementing. So we're finding landowners who are interested in implementing these practices because they have to do something different. They have to do something additional. So they're doing traditional grazing right now, and in most cases they lose carbon on their soil. The grass is overgrazed. The root systems become shallower. So you get desertification, you get bare soil in a lot of places, and that's a huge problem globally, I think, but also in the US. I think there's numbers quoted that also the US have lost about 50% of its soil carbon in the last 100 years. Now, I don't know how that was being measured, but that's because of overgrazing, but also the heavy use of fertilizer sometimes, and plowing and tilling, that type of stuff. So we find landowners who are interested in doing things differently. And then we help them also with implementing these type of practices. We're not doing that ourselves. We're working with a group called Understanding Ag. They're experts in doing this. So they actually help landowners to how to implement, and that's really different from ranch to ranch. Yeah.
So can we hone in a little bit? Give us an example of what some of these solutions are and the ways they're different from traditional ones.
It sounds almost too simple to be true. It's almost kind of a fairy tale when I first heard that. So if you graze much shorter and you give grass a very long resting period, so sometimes ranches graze for half a day and then the cows move off and they don't come back for sometimes months. If you start doing that, the plant gets grazed half, but not more than that. And as a result, the plant is getting an impulse to start growing much faster. So these native grass systems sometimes come back, or quite often come back, but the roots become very deep. Roots can come 9, 12 feet deep. And vegetation on these ranches becomes super tall. It's amazing. It's not only that, it's not just more vegetation, but also more diverse vegetation. Huge amount of plant species come back. The coolest stories is from ranches. Wow, we have not seen that plants for 50 years here, and suddenly they're back. It's all cool. It's not only vegetation. Vegetation and roots is the first thing, but you get more insects. Because you have more insects, you get more birds, you get more wildlife. So everything comes back. That's the vegetation part. If you have deep roots and you have healthy soil, you also store more water in soil. So these ranches can store 10 times more water than their neighbors. It's almost shocking to see if you walk 10 feet away from a fence and you look at the neighbors and you start measuring how much water the soil can hold. It's 10 times more. And that is so incredibly important.
So their cost of water is going to be massively different there.
Yeah, it's massively different. And you're drought resilient and you're also erosion resilient. So those impacts are incredible. Yeah.
Wow. So is it typical, like if you have cattle, would you just kind of let them roam free and do what they will and just kind of leave them alone generally? Is that what people do?
Yeah, so the typical grazing is indeed cows graze for a long period, sometimes weeks, sometimes even longer, and then they move to a new pasture. So what you do here is you split your ranch in much smaller pastures, and you use flexible fencing, electric fencing for that. Some of the ranches have
to kind of guide them.
Yeah, hundreds of different pastures, so they're much more dense in a certain area. It's basically mimicking how the bison moved over the Great Plains 100 to 200 years ago. A million of these bisons, almost shoulder to shoulder, they grazed very briefly and they moved on. And that's basically what's happening. If you read the old journals from Lewis and Clark, what they described on the Great Plains was incredible lush vegetation and brooks and water everywhere, and that's all gone. So basically you mimic that and restoring that. And it's incredible how you see the resilience of nature. If you are not standing in the way of nature, if you let it go, it will come back. And that's brilliant, of course, for what's happening on the ranch. So the ranches become more resilient, they can actually have a higher stocking density, and at the end of the day they can have actually more cows on the same piece of land because they grow more vegetation. But it's also a brilliant solution for companies who want to reduce their carbon impact. Tying these things together, that's what our company does, is such a wonderful solution. It's so much the right thing to do.
So how has it been kind of demonstrating this solution and making these connections with these big partners? Like, are people looking for it, or do you have to kind of let them know this is the thing they didn't know they needed?
Yeah, it is very much indeed, it's a lot of education. There's actually a few people who realized how much carbon is stored in soil. And I fully understand that because I had no clue. I never thought about soil in my life, to be honest. If you're not in agriculture, but why do you think about it? But if you start looking into the data, there is more, I'll give you just a couple of numbers, there's more carbon in the first 3 feet of soil on our planet, so more carbon in the first 3 feet of soil than all the atmospheric carbon and all the biomass carbon combined. So that's all the grasslands and the forest and the Amazon and everything combined. So nature stores carbon in soil. That is a very natural part of the carbon cycle. And we seem to overlook that. We forgot about it because you can't see it so easily. You can measure it very easily, but we forgot about it. So there's a lot of education, especially with on the buyer side, companies who want to do something about their carbon credits. We call them buyers, they buy carbon credits. So there's a lot of education. Is this reliable, and can you measure it, and is it verified, and is it permanent, and is it additional? So there's a lot of education you have to do there, and I completely understand that. And then on the landowner side, there's always skepticism from, so you're going to tell us how you can, how I can improve my land.
We've been doing this for 3 generations, and you're coming in here and telling us.
So we're not telling that, so we're very careful how we do that. But you see more and more landowners are doing this now. We have at this point in time, I think, 180 landowners under contract in 20 states. And you get all these success stories from how things can work. So it's in that respect becoming easier and easier. But on the buyer side, there's still skepticism.
Yeah. So, I mean, what steps are you taking to kind of combat that skepticism?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned case studies and stuff, but
yeah, it's not even a case study. It's just doing this at the scale that really matters. So really important, and never get out of the way, is to deliver the highest quality carbon credits you can think of, the highest quality nature-based carbon credits. And maybe before I discuss that, maybe how this concept basically works. It's based on photosynthesis, and I almost forgot to talk about it. If you have a plant and it grows, it takes CO2 out of the atmosphere, it uses sunlight as energy, and it turns the CO2 into sugars and oxygen. You need water and CO2 to make that happen. So the sugars are being used to grow the plant, but the plant uses part of the sugars to pump it into the root systems and from the root into the soil. Why is the plant doing that? Because microorganisms in the soil will give nutrients back to the plant. So there's a very active trading system right under our feet, which we don't see, but you can measure it, where basically plants pump carbon into soil and microorganisms give nutrients back to the plant. We're talking about that carbon. We're not talking about roots. We're talking about the carbon being pumped in the soil. So on the rancher side, there's also education. Education, that sounds pedantic. It's basically awareness from, look, you can change how you're doing this. And you can overcome the tremendous struggles you have with drought and with erosion and that type of stuff. So there's luckily experts like the group Understanding Ag and the Savory Institute, who have top-notch consultants and experts who actually help landowners to implement it. Because it's not easy, of course, to do that. You have to change what you have been doing.
Yeah. I just kind of imagine, though, the positive thing is that these ranchers and farmers and landowners, it's like they love their land. They want to see the land thriving. And so if they can do it in a way that's cost effective for them and that's going to just make the operations in their business run better, it seems like, they'd be open.
Absolutely, Megan. It's spot on. So they're, of course, very proud of their land, but also very protective. It's their family income quite often. And some of these ranches are the 7th or the 8th generation of landowners. Right. So they're very careful and very connected to the land. But yes, if they see, there's so many success stories now. There's fantastic films also from Peter Big, Roots So Deep, or Soil Carbon Cowboys, where basically ranchers tell their stories, how also it was hard quite often to make that change. You quite often see it's a generation change, and some of the fathers or mothers, they operate the ranch anymore, their children take over, and you see then it's the time to implement new practices. So yes, it's not easy to do, and therefore it's also very important to get support from people who know how to implement.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me to really hone in on what their struggles are. Like you mentioned, drought and erosion and all that kind of stuff. Like that's forefront on their minds all the time. And then I think just being able to empathize with that love and connection they have for the land. And if you can speak their language, those conversations go better.
Yeah, so one of the typical comments you hear sometimes from ranchers, well, we don't have time to move cattle around twice per day. We're too busy with other things. But the cool thing is that these cows learn how to actually do that. So when the fence opens, they all race towards the next pasture with
Crazy.
lush new grass. And basically the ranchers who are doing this type of stuff, we're actually less busy than we were before. Before we were always fighting with weeds and we were spraying and we were very busy with working maybe against nature. And now our life is much easier. We have to, let nature go its way. You generally see with these cows, they have less parasites, they have less issues. Most of them don't use antibiotics, so it's everything becomes easier at the ranch after you're in that right spot. Yeah.
I bet you there is definitely a branding benefit to this as well. Like you can make it part of who you are as a provider of whatever it is. If you're a beef person, like consumers who care, this is a perfect way to connect with them.
Yeah. Some ranchers, when they're in the right supply chains, they can indeed, or have a direct consumer relationship. They can sell grass-fed beef, which can have a much higher value. You need to be in the right locations, of course. Yeah, I think this ecological regeneration aspect from the carbon storage is also of interest to buyers. It's not that they want to pay extra for it yet, but they like the impact they have. It's not just buying a carbon credit and whatever. It has impact on acres. It has impact on grassland ecology, on birds. And that's why we're very proud to have a collaboration with Audubon, for instance, because they like what we're doing. So it's such a compelling story. It's not just a story. It's such a compelling impact you can have. And that's why this is so cool. Yeah.
That is so cool. So let's pivot a little bit in terms of, like, you have a fantastic solution. Like you said, it's almost a fairy tale too good to be true. And, there's big companies that have adopted it. And so what does the current moment of growth look like, and what's kind of the challenges that are coming with that?
Yeah. So I think we've reached an incredibly stable platform at this point in time. So we're selling to very large companies like Microsoft and Nestlé and several other very large companies. We work with landowners on 1.5 million acres in 20 states. So that's a lot. 1.5 million acres. That's basically, if that would be in one square, it would be 48 miles by 48 miles. So that's quite a huge area. If you put it down. So imagine indeed vegetation becomes lush and comes back in birds and insects and water storage. So it's really cool. The United States has about 650 million acres of grasslands. We're at 1.5. So you see there's an enormous... I was going to
say, I see the potential for...
Potential is huge. Yeah. I'm not saying that you can do this on every acre, but you can do that on a lot of them. So we can deliver way more, and we have basically 10 million acres of ranchers who are willing to sign up with us, but we want to sell the carbon credits first. So if you sign up with Grassroots Carbon, we have guaranteed sold the credits, so you can get paid as a landowner. So that's important. So the growth potential is strongly on the credit buyer side, so companies willing to do something about their carbon impact. I think that's the largest challenge.
So do you have a sense of how big these companies are?
How big the companies are? Some companies have, of course, a tremendous carbon problem. So they're looking desperate for solutions which are scalable and affordable and reliable and are additional and permanent. So I understand that. So the first thing a company should do is, of course, reduce their carbon emissions.
Their own. Yeah.
So that is really important. You cannot always do that fast and easy, and for some industries that is really very difficult. Then carbon credits can play a very important role, maybe even in the shorter term, so you have more time of implementing practice or till technologies evolve. So for some companies, carbon credits are really important. Well, they have to look, of course, at the quality. You must really buy high-quality credits, which are really measured and proven and third-party verified and certified, etc., etc. Yeah.
So, I mean, I've heard this from multiple people in the carbon market, but how many not quality carbon credits are out there? Like, is it the majority, or what does that landscape look like?
I don't have a good sense for that. I know there indeed is probably a lot of nature-based carbon credits which are dubious at the end of the day. And of course, you sometimes read Guardian articles, and very good that the journalists dive into that and try to find where these carbon credits should improve in quality. So that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that all nature-based solutions are bad. Again, nature stores carbon in soil. There's so much carbon in soil. It's important that you just measure it and not just keep your fingers crossed and we model something. We're not there yet. Over time, that might become more reliable. At this point in time, you measure. We take extra deep measurements, 3 feet deep cores, which is expensive, but we believe in the importance of quality credits. You must measure them. You must third-party verify them. And I think that we get a good listening ear from a lot of buyers, and they're very interested in what we're doing.
Yeah. So how are you getting in touch with these companies who would be good candidates for buying carbon credits?
Sometimes sometimes you meet them at conferences, special climate-related conferences. Sometimes direct outreach. That's the networks we have. But it's sometimes an issue. Yeah, we were looking. So if there's any listeners on this podcast who want to know more about high reliable carbon removal, we're more than happy, of course, to.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, how big is this target market? Like, are these only Fortune 500 companies, or can it go much broader than that?
It can much broader. We of course work with some smaller companies as well. One of them is Olipop, the healthy soft drinks.
I'm familiar with them.
So we're delivering carbon removal credits to Olipop. A couple of other smaller companies. So we're happy to work with almost anyone. It doesn't have to be the massive deal. Anyone who is interested in creating this impact, first of all the carbon impact, but then the ecological impact, we're super happy to have a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I mean, that's good. That means there's more potential to create a bigger impact. So, where are you hoping to be a year from now in terms of, maybe you can think of it in acreage or however you'd want to spell that out?
So this is all about a scale at an impact that matters, but also do this fast. And why? Not just because of the financials of Grassroots Carbon or its success. That is almost irrelevant. This is a solution which has so much impact. So much ecological impact, so much carbon impact.
That we need.
We need it. So we need it as part of the portfolio. So doing this faster and at a larger scale is actually really important. At the end of the day, reach 10 million acres. Okay, that was nice. That's not the impact we need. So how can we go much faster? And how can we go much more scale in a faster way? So this year we're probably reaching maybe the 2 million acres. Next year it should be double, and let's keep the doubling in mind till looking forward. And you can ask yourself the question, why not? What's standing in the way to actually not do that? And why would we not do that? So flip it around. It's not what we can do, but why should we not do it? I think that's the importance here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I think you nailed it. So I think I asked most of the questions I wanted to ask. Do you have anything else that you'd want to share with, prospective partners that you'd want them to understand?
Yeah, I think I explained a lot what we're doing. Indeed, so if you were interested in doing something about carbon, reduce your carbon impact, and you're interested in additional benefits, this is a fantastic opportunity. I think in the current environment in the United States, it's easy to say, why act now? We can just wait a little bit.
Right.
And that, of course, we don't like. We like acting now. And even if you're not too interested in carbon, this is creating a position for your company to be ready when carbon becomes an important item on the agenda again. But while you're doing so, you have access to grassland ecology regeneration. So this is important for grassland ecology regeneration. I think every American loves their grasslands and loves the fundamentals from what make this country great at the end of the day. Loves birds, loves seeing wildlife. So this is something which creates natural beauty again. And everybody supports it, I think. Yeah. So let's act now, and let's not wait.
No, absolutely agree. So, and the more early adopters to things we have like this, the easier it is for your neighbor and your to follow suit.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
We have the landowners lined up, so they're ready to participate, they're ready to implement this. But we need, of course, more buyers for carbon solutions. Yeah.
For the credits.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good to know. Well, thank you so much for telling me about this. You've educated me, and I hope listeners as well. And thank you so much for caring so much about the impact this has.
Super. Thanks so much, Megan, for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. That was Henk Mooiweer from Grassroots Carbon, proving that climate solutions can be both natural and scalable. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Green Disruptors wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone who believes in building a greener, more resilient future. You can learn more about Grassroots Carbon at grassrootscarbon.com and follow their incredible work restoring millions of acres of American grasslands. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep disrupting for good.